This is Conejotako speaking, writing this after spending almost 3 hours reading it on stream. I was commenting section by section on what I thought of the episode, how I believed it would affect the plot, and things like that. So if you're craving more ReZero, well, you can go to my secondary channel to watch the full stream. And if you're watching this from my English channel, I'm sorry, but for now, I can only do streams in Spanish. After ending the stream, I started reading the episode on my own. You know, reading the episode with almost 100 people live is not the same as reading it peacefully and at your own pace. Honestly, the episode was amazing and made me feel scared for Rem. That's because, being a named chapter, the focus was directed at YAE, and while she manages to decapitate and finish Rem, something happened that nobody would have imagined. Although I'm sure it's something that will be causing controversy in the fandom. Regardless, I will give my stance on what happened and how I feel about that plot twist. It's not that my opinion is worth more or less than yours, but I think I can give a slightly more complete opinion because I have read this entire universe. Before we begin, as always, a thank you to the channel's donors. On this occasion, I thank Dante Heredia. Thank you very much for financially supporting the channel. I also give many thanks to Remote Planet, a user from my English community who joined recently, and with whom I've had the opportunity to exchange emails. By the way, just for today, I want to give a special thank you to Jose Riera, who gave me a huge super chat. Thank you very, very much. I will strive to continue bringing content that is up to par. Now let's begin. Welcome to the analysis and recap of ReZero Arc 9, Chapter 51. Honestly, it wasn't a surprise for me to see YAE's past. I mean, it's her named chapter. In a named episode, we should always expect something big to be revealed and for the character to do something important for the plot. What was surprising was the suddenness of YAE's named chapter. This is an indicator that we are already in the final stretch of the arc. But being in the final stretch of the arc is not the same as being at the end of Aldebaran's betrayal plot, as the author can easily decide that the next arc will be a continuation of Aldebaran's subplot. So, we must be vigilant. But getting back to YAE's past. In this flashback that was shown to us, we were finally given more lore about the ninjas. Something curious that we already knew was that even though ninjas reside in Wallachia, they are actually originally from Kararagi, that nation where Rem and Subaru fled to in an alternate story. We already knew some things about the people of this tribe, but something that changes everything is learning the fate of some fugitives from this place. The ninja culture is very jealous about letting its members go or allowing members to escape this village, so being a deserter is difficult. But even so, we know there were some ninjas who managed to escape. In fact, we now have knowledge of 3 ninjas who escaped and caused great disasters. We know the fate of 2 of them. These ninjas were named Sasuke and Raizo. And at the time, they became the servants of a Sin Archbishop. Curiously, today's episode would reveal the identity of the 3rd ninja. And while it didn't reveal the exact fate of this 3rd ninja, it didn't need to because in reality, we already know this remaining member to a great extent. I'm talking about Todd Fang. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, the 3rd ninja who escaped was the one who put the protagonist in a tough spot during his stay in Wallachia. I'll clarify that the text never explicitly says that Todd was this 3rd subject. But in Japanese, the characters have a peculiar way of speaking, and this 3rd ninja's peculiar way of speaking was Todd's way of speaking. It is said in the past how, in a killing event, YAE ended up sparing the life of a comrade from her village, and this person she spared was Todd, who would leave the place, and eventually, we would learn his fate. But I feel like I'm going off on a tangent. However, it was necessary to comment on this detail about one of the most important characters of the Empire arc. Returning to YAE, the flashback also reveals the training she had to go through to become the ninja she is. It is said that ninjas would steal children from other villages to train them and force them to serve their new home. It's also said that the training was inhuman. First, they would drug them so they would forget their origins. And then, those who survived this mind-breaking were poisoned to acquire resistance to poison, while at the same time, their bodies were modified to perform better in combat. For example, it is said that ninjas are capable of moving their organs in order to avoid lethal blows, and this was something revealed that YAE was doing during the fight. Honestly, this whole part is a very raw description that astonished several of the viewers live on stream, so I strongly advise you to read it on your own later. The most important part of this flashback is how YAE's feelings and individuality evolved throughout her life. It is said that she was aware she was special, but at the same time, she detested receiving different treatment for this specialty. It bothered her that people attached responsibilities to her for things she simply had no initiative for. For example, it is said that her comrades and her instructor were so astonished by her talent that they themselves gave their lives and provoked her to attack them so she could finish the ceremony with their lives. When she graduated as a genin, she was visited by Olbart, who was the highest figure in the village, and he gave her a contradictory message, a message that went against everything the village taught her. He basically communicated to her that strong people like him and her could afford to harbor a feeling in their hearts. YAE never understood these words, but at the end of her duel with the blue-haired maid, I believe she came to understand them, and I'll explain why in a moment. A cool detail mentioned in today's chapter is that it was revealed why YAE has the nickname Crimson Sakura. That's because on the night she killed her comrades, it is said that the white snow cherry blossoms that had bloomed ended up painted an intense red tone by the end of the day. You can imagine why. After that, there's a time skip, and it narrates what the interactions between Priscilla and YAE were like. There was already a side story that told us how they interact, but we had never been shown what the first days they spoke were like. It is said that Priscilla, with her great judgment, was able to deduce the type of person YAE was. That is, someone who didn't seek to be special and detested specialty. This sickened and repulsed Priscilla, who firmly believes in the beauty of things. By beauty, she doesn't just mean physical appearance, but also the beauty of intangible things. For example, it is said that even when Priska feels rejection towards Heinkel, she admits that watching Reinhardt's father use his sword techniques is a beautiful spectacle. In contrast, it seems she simply wasn't capable of feeling that kind of thing for YAE. Even so, Priscilla took pity on her and dedicated a few words to her, where she basically told her that even if she tried to run away from the things she abhors or wants to avoid, eventually she too will have to deal with that specialty she tries to ignore. She then proceeds to ask her to prepare for that moment. Another detail that I thought was great was the fact that YAE suspected that her lady, Priscilla, already knew her true identity as an assassin, but did nothing about it, either because she simply liked the danger or because she suspected that her presence would eventually end up benefiting her. If I may say something, I believe Priscilla did know about YAE's identity. I believe this because later she would fake her death but continue to help Aldebaran from the shadows. Then, in the novel where the Sun Princess heads to the Empire, Aldebaran meets alone with YAE for a moment to plan certain things, and upon returning from this chat, Priscilla asks him if he finished talking to the dead, which left the traitor surprised. The curious thing is that in the end, Priscilla was right about keeping YAE by her side, as she would later end up supporting Aldebaran in the missions he carried out to save Priscilla. Anyway, let's continue with today's episode. After Priscilla's death, YAE reaffirmed her thought that it was okay if she wasn't special. After all, someone died precisely because of the things that come with being such a person. And now, a person who was influenced by the Sun Princess's specialty was extinguishing his life for the memories of this person. And YAE didn't want to be affected or influenced by that specialty either. Here, the exact reason why YAE obeys Aldebaran in everything is repeated to us. She obeys him because she wants this person to fulfill his purpose as soon as possible and leave, so that she can stop harboring this special feeling for him. No, it's not feelings of love. They are feelings of fear. Feelings that make YAE feel an attachment to things that a shinobi cannot and should not feel. Something I find curious is the parallel between Rem and YAE. Both are strongly influenced by Subaru and the fake Subaru, but while one is devoted out of love, the other is devoted out of fear. And now both maids are fighting for the object of their feelings. But to finish this part, I liked how the author told us in the main story the most interesting and intriguing part of the side novel called Pride, Prejudice, and Zombies. It's in this story where YAE would appear for the first time, and it would also be the story where Aldebaran manages to subdue her and force her to obey him. He achieved this when he faced her in a duel where we are never told about the successful loops he had against her. We are only informed of the result. Obviously, at the time, the author didn't narrate how Aldebaran achieved this because that was a spoiler. But now that we know more about the traitor, he can finally reveal to us what happened. You surely already know that another use of Aldebaran's power is that apparently when his sense of responsibility or confidence in his duty is diminished, his power can change involuntarily. And the change that occurs is that the aggressor ends up being the person who remembers the loops and not the victim, who would be Aldebaran. It is confirmed to us in that novel how Al's sense of responsibility was so diminished by the deaths YAE caused him that his power's function changed, and she was affected by this variant. I don't want to go into details because if you are here, it's because you already read the episode. But any form of death you can imagine, it is said YAE used it in order to try to get out of that eternal loop. However, she never succeeded. Although something I didn't know and that caught my attention, even more than the final result of Rem versus YAE, is knowing that there were loops where YAE just ran and got as far away from the mansion as she could, but still, she returned to the beginning of the loop where Aldebaran would greet her. This is important because some theorize that for the traitor to put his opponents into this type of loop, it was necessary for YAE to kill him, but it seems that's not true. In any case, I'm waiting for a decent translation to better understand this point. And to close, an interesting curiosity from this side novel I mentioned a moment ago is that it's confirmed that in a failed loop, YAE managed to kill Priscilla. It's not known how she killed her, but it's good to keep this fact in mind before moving on to the next section, the YAE versus Rem section, which, with no exaggeration, will be a section that I see causing controversy in the fandom. In my previous video, I had mentioned that this fight was going to be difficult for Rem, and that was because of the evident strength difference between them. I had predicted that Rem could put up a fight because YAE was sufficiently weakened by previous events, and that would make them end up on a similar level. Well, it turns in I was wrong. Even with all the problems, YAE was still 3 times more skilled and stronger than Rem. This is made clear when the novel says that while Rem struggled to walk on the flying surface, YAE moved glamorously and with ease. Or when the novel itself clarifies that the even outcome of the combat was possible due to YAE's exhaustion. If Rem was able to keep fighting and putting YAE in a tight spot, it was also because the weapon she used was very effective at concentrating force on a single point, while YAE's threads were not the ideal weapon to face a weapon with these characteristics. YAE had to dedicate many resources to repel a simple attack from Rem. On top of that, they were in a limited space, so YAE's dexterity and agility couldn't be used at 100%. And as if YAE wasn't nerfed enough already, suddenly Rem starts using the platform's axis of rotation to increase the force of her attacks. Another ironic thing this episode established is that if YAE had fought to incapacitate Rem, she probably would have won. Since she started fighting with killing intent, that's why Rem awakened the sensory abilities that perceive this bloodlust. If only the ninja had been aware of this, then she would have won. Even so, this doesn't take away from Rem's merit, who managed to show admirable feats like tricking YAE and freezing her own blood to form a barrier to protect herself and avoid being crushed by her enemy's cage. All of these are feats that are better to read in the novel, as a summary wouldn't do them justice. But what I definitely liked the most was the culmination of the maid's fight, as it is there that Olbart's words that I mentioned earlier carry real weight. After Rem tricks YAE into taking the impact of the fall, it is said that YAE hides a thread that manages to decapitate Rem when she came to deliver the final blow. And it is there that she remembers the chat where Olbart recommends having something in her heart. Even if it's counterproductive for a ninja, Olbart had recommended this under the logic that just as a ninja drinks poison to build resistance, then it would also be logical to have something to cling to in order to develop a kind of awareness of that weakness. As brilliant as YAE was, she never managed to understand her boss's message. Because if she had, she would have accepted the fear her heart felt for Aldebaran and wouldn't have actively sought a way to get rid of it, which ironically would lead to her end, because right at that moment, despite the decapitation, Rem managed to land a final blow. And now comes the controversial scene. YAE's last attack truly managed to decapitate Rem, so what happened? Throughout the episode, it was being mentioned how the lacerations Rem had were being healed quickly by her racial ability. It's even argued that YAE could no longer wound Rem because her body was constantly regenerating. And as if this weren't enough, it's made clear that the blue-haired maid's body was finally awakening the true characteristics of her species. So, did Rem survive the decapitation just because of her new monstrous regeneration? That's what it would seem if not for the narration suddenly mentioning healing magic. So my theory as of today is that Rem simply combined both things. Her newly acquired racial regeneration and the healing power of her water magic, which has been improving enormously since she woke up. Let's remember that Priscilla has been giving her lessons to improve her management of this. The author has even rewritten part of that novel because he knew the main novel would soon reference the events of that story. So my bet is that Rem was simply never decapitated. For it to count as decapitation, your head needs to separate from your body. But what if said separation never occurred? My theory is that Rem instantly regenerated the areas that YAE's single thread was cutting and made sure to do so until the thread left her body. For me, this makes all the sense in the world, since Rem was not cut by YAE's 20 threads, but only by one, and I think it's easier for her to regenerate from a single one than from all of her enemy's threads. I have a Peruvian friend who believes that what saved Rem was not what I just told you, but that she was actually able to get out of it by using soul marriage, a technique exclusive to Priscilla and her mother. I'd like to explain the logic of this plot twist, but believe me, it's an explanation that references many details from the side novels. Details that if I start talking about here would take us too much time. But in short, this technique allows the caster to pass a mortal injury to a valuable object of the user. In fact, I'll put an excerpt of how Priscilla used it in her fight against Sirius. In the clip, you can see how the Sun Princess is truly hit by her rival's attack, and you even hear the impact of the blow received. This is important because YAE said and confirms that she also heard the impact of her steel thread cutting Rem's neck. So, if Rem used Priscilla's technique, what object did she sacrifice? When Rem recovered her memories, it was discussed how her steel weapon was an important property for her because, aside from having it since she was a child, Subaru was constantly cleaning it during the time the maid was asleep. This made Rem appreciate this object more. So it seems somewhat logical that if she sacrificed something through this technique, then that must be her weapon. What most supported this theory when I talked about it with my friend is that Rem's final blow to YAE is precisely a punch, and not her weapon. Could this be the definitive answer? I'm just sharing the possibility with you. Personally, I'm not so fond of this, so I'll go with the principle of Occam's razor, which says that the correct answer is usually the one that is the simplest. So, without meaning to sound vain, I choose to believe my simple theory over my friend's theory that cites several side novels. But that has been all for today. As I always say, a like and a comment help the algorithm like you have no idea, so consider leaving both to support the channel. So tell me, were you convinced by the way Rem defeated YAE?